Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your Bitcoin show. Listen, I'm glad to have you guys here today on this Friday. Friday the 12th of February 2021. Thank you for tuning in. Now, listen, we're seeing big players starting to come into the game on cryptocurrency, like Tesla. Okay, $1.3 billion. I'm going to tell you about the big players out there, the big multi-billionaires out there. They associate with one another more than they associate with normal people out there. They have friends, and they talk amongst themselves. I'm going to tell you, somebody like Tesla, in the class of Tesla, when he goes out, he plops down $1,300 million. Realize what kind of big money that is? Guarantee you guys, they do not plop down that kind of money, a billionaire. Billionaires do not get rich from making mistakes. Billionaires do not get rich by risking a lot of money. That's not how they got rich. Generally, they have insider information. They talk, and they know that other players are getting ready to come into the game, on something, on an asset, and they like to get in there first and grab. Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies are passing a certain milestone right now that people out there do not realize the milestone that they're passing. And the milestone that they're passing is they're making a transition right now from becoming a speculative asset, which is what they have been, into becoming a store of value, a place you put your money, big money, other than treasury bonds and things like that. Now, you know what? I'm going to tell you guys something. This summer coming up, the Fed's pushed against the wall. Signs of inflation this summer are going to start to force U.S. Treasuries yields up. That's the tendency. In fact, the tendency is going to be for the bond bubble to burst, especially on the long end of the yield curve. It's ready. It's ripe and it's ready. It's as ripe and ready as the stock market. Okay, that's the tendency. So what's going to stop bond yields from rising? And why is this important to cryptocurrencies? This is massively important to cryptocurrencies. There's something that's coming down the pike, probably this summer or next fall, called yield curve control. Basically what this is the Federal Reserve starts to control the long end. See, they control the short end of the yield curve. And they have for quite a while now. And they've kept rates low, very low, near the 1% bound. But it's that long end of the yield control, the long end of the yield curve, the 10-year, the 30-year, that the Fed normally doesn't have control over. And this is the tendency for these is going to be to go up. If not alone, the reason would be it's just that the United States is so far in debt that they'll never get their head above water. And when investors start to realize that there's signs of inflation coming, big time inflation, this makes a negative yield on their bonds. If inflation rate is going to run more than, say, 2%, and your yield on your bond is under 2%, you've got a negative yielding bond. In other words, you're losing money. It's a losing proposition. So not only are you buying into an entity that's totally bankrupt, the United States government, and can never pay off their debts, and are going deeper into debt every day, but you're getting a negative yield on that money. Investors are chasing yield. Believe me, investors are out there, and they're watching cryptocurrency, and they're seeing yield. Massive yields, massive gains to be made. And they're starting to pile in one by one. At the same time, you're going to see the Fed come along. And this is going to happen. Yield curve control. It's going to happen. And they're going to force the yields down on these bonds. So the bonds aren't paying anymore. You take bonds out of the marketplace. And what's going to happen? You're going to see gold, silver, cryptocurrencies take skyrockets. Skyrockets. Another thing you're dealing with here with Bitcoin is, what's the upper price limit of a Bitcoin? Name it. Where can it stop? And see, it works both ways. It's like a double-edged sword with Bitcoin. Bitcoin, what's the lower end of the price limit of Bitcoin? Well, 0. What's the upper end of a Bitcoin? Infinity. You know? And when you take a look at a Bitcoin itself, it breaks down into 99 million Satoshis. That's unlimited as well because they can extend the decimal point. Most people out there think, hey, you know, I buy a Bitcoin, I'm buying 1 unit, a Bitcoin. That's it. That's one. It's like 1 Bitcoin. That's not true. It's divided off into 99 million units. And so it's not inconceivable to think that at some point in the future, that 1 Satoshi, or 1/99 millionth of a Bitcoin, could become equal in value or parallel to the US dollar. Because the dollar is going to start to experience what's called hyperinflation. This is because the dollar is actually, its intrinsic value is 0, like Bitcoin. The intrinsic value of a Bitcoin is 0. But Bitcoin has certain aspects that the dollar doesn't have. And one of the biggest things is there can only ever be 21 million Bitcoins. With dollars, they can print them to infinity. There's no limit. There's no hard limit to it. And this is huge. This is huge because nobody wants to put their money into something, or no rational person would want to put their money into something that could rain down from the heavens billions of them. That would be like, you know, I mean, if people said that snow, you know, was okay. There's a little bit of snow on the ground. They scraped it up and formed it into balls, and the Eskimos were using it as money. And then all of a sudden they got a snowstorm. Their money would be valueless. This is the way with the US dollar. There's no end to how many they can print. They can rain them down from the heavens like snow. And you're going to invest in that? Or see, you can't do that with cryptocurrencies. You can't do that with Bitcoin. This makes Bitcoin the perfect saving vehicle as well. It has very many aspects of gold. And so what we're seeing now, we are seeing the Bitcoin amount of capital that's invested in Bitcoin starting to move past the 1.5 billion mark. Why this is so important, have you ever heard the saying, too big to fail? Yeah, you must have heard that saying. They say it about banks. When a bank gets to be a certain size, they say, well, it's too big to fail. And if we look at Deutsche Bank's a classic example of this. Why didn't Deutsche Bank fail? All those years they were going down, is because they've received support of some means or another, behind the table or whatever. They've been supported, so that they didn't fail. And they didn't fail because they were too big to fail. They were too within the financial system itself. If they had failed, they had so much leverage within the financial system, they would have taken the whole financial system down. That's the meaning of too big to fail. So they didn't let them fail. Well, Bitcoin is rapidly approaching that area where if it failed, it could pull down the entire financial system. A catastrophic failure of Bitcoin. So you hear the central banks out there with all this chatter about how you're going to lose all your money and everything else. Bitcoin, once it passes that event horizon and becomes too big to fail, and then grows larger past that, it's reaching that point now. It's getting up close to it. And you get more of these big investors starting to pour in. Does this mean we can't have a pullback? Oh yeah, we can have a pullback. The stock market can have a pullback. Everything can have a pullback. But all of the parts of the financial system, parts and pieces of it, are becoming now too big for failure. A pullback is not failure. So if the stock market completely and utterly failed and had an 80% drop in the stock market, like some of these guys are talking about, that would be failure. And it would bring down the rest of the financial system. They can't let that happen. The Fed can't let that happen. We saw back in last year, we saw the stock market fall off precipitously. What happened is, well, they came out with a big, huge stimulus package of $2.2 trillion, and the stock markets went up to where it is now. They didn't let it fail. They're not going to let, they can't, they're getting to a point now where they can't let anything that's really big, too big to fail, fail. They have to start up the rotary presses, and they have to produce unbelievable amounts of fiat money. And this is not going to end. This is there's a law in the universe where things that are in motion tend to stay in motion. So we're going to see a continuation of this. What's going on? More and more things becoming too big to fail. More and more bubbles. Yeah, I'm talking about cryptocurrency. Yes, it might be in a bubble, but that doesn't matter anymore. Bubbles don't matter anymore because they got the rotary press. And they're able to make endless amounts of this fiat money. What it's going to matter is the end of the road in all of this. It's called hyperinflation. And that's where we're going. We're going there fast. There's no way out at this point. And it's going to drive Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies and gold and silver, all of it, because those are the only avenues out of the dollar to infinity. And you can be on that train, or you can be left behind. And most people are not going to get left behind. But you know when they're going to buy? They're going to buy when they have to empty out their bank account and they only get a tiny little fraction of either gold, silver, or cryptocurrencies. It's going to be a mad panic at that point. So everybody that buys right now on this end is an early adopter and is very smart. And, you know, if you've been watching my channel for a number of years, I've been preaching this message. And some of you guys out there have listened. And you've done rather well so far. You've seen your money at least double in what you've put into these alternative asset classes. But I'm going to tell you guys right now, this is just beginning. And you are still an early adopter into gold, silver, and cryptocurrencies at this point. Because the masses, the big-time masses out there, they haven't turned to this in desperation when they see their money just going up in flames. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe, and catch you in the next show. And give me a thumbs up and ring that notification bell. Bye-bye, guys.